can go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you for joining us today. We are some of the students at the UIC MSTP program, and this is brought to you by our outreach and community team. So today we want to talk to you about the MD-PhD path, becoming a physician scientist. All right, there we go. Okay, so first I want to introduce our panelists for today. So this is me, I'm Nathan. We have Elise, May, Hannah, Juliana, and Corey joining us today. Briefly, we're basically going to start off with some introductions over the first few minutes. Then we'll give you a brief overview of MD-PhD training and programs. Then we will have some moderated questions and answers, and then we will open things up to the audience. So we'll start off with our panelists. So I can go first. My name is Nathan Calzadilla. I am from Miami, Florida. I went to Johns Hopkins University and I majored in chemical and biomolecular engineering. Now I am a G3 in the program. So I've got about a year and a few months left on my PhD. My research interests involve, let's see. So I do gastroenterology research. They involve mostly inflammatory bowel disease, alcoholic liver disease, and using bioinformatic approaches to study those diseases. Clinically, I'm interested in gastroenterology and ear, nose, and throat. Other interests of mine include playing the piano. I'm involved with the dog rescue community here in Chicago, and I like boxing as an exercise. So who would like to go next?
I can go. My name's Corey. I'm the M4 in the group, so the one at the very end of the journey. And I am originally from Denver, Colorado, technically born in upstate New York, but I was like 1 year old. So Denver, Coloradan through and through. I went to the University of Denver there, which is a small liberal arts school that didn't have a ton of like pre-med strong advising. So I came across MD-PhD late. My current phase, like I said, I'm an M4, so I've done my medical school and my PhD, and I am actually really close to matching into residency, which is going to be in obstetrics and gynecology. Women's health was kind of a late realization for me in terms of it being a calling and a passion, because I did my research in neuroscience, had all the way through undergrad up to my PhD, but I'm going to bring that along with me into obstetrics. My other passions, goodness, cooking. I have 3 things in the oven right now. I raise butterflies. It's pretty nerdy and fun. What other thing do I like? When I had my dad's tools, I like to renovate furniture. That's something, but now I have to build my own tool set. So do we want to popcorn this bad boy to someone else, or do we want someone else want to call out?
I'll jump in.
Get it, May.
Thanks, Corey. Hi, everybody. I'm May. I am from a weird small place in Texas, and I went to Harvard for undergrad. Thought I was going to stay on the East Coast forever, but that did not happen. I very happily moved to Chicago in 2016, and it is now my 6th year in the program. I am a G4, and barring any terrible surprises, I am defending my thesis March 14th and going back to med school in April. So I'm very excited about that transition, and also mildly to moderately terrified, but it's going to be very cool. So research-wise, my work focuses on diabetic wound healing, and I study the effects of compounds that activate a specific transcription factor. And clinically, I have a lot of feelings and a lot of things that I care about. Most importantly, I'm really interested in like community health, primary care, and women's and LGBTQ plus health. So I don't know how I'm going to roll that into a real job someday, but somehow I'm going to find a path that makes sense for me to do all that stuff. So TBD on that. And when I'm not doing science things, I am eating really delicious things and taking really satisfying photos of those delicious things and going on vacation every chance I get. And I have a cool partner, and we like to do a lot of beer related things. And we have a pet lizard who's pretty rad. So that's how I spend most of my time. I can't see anybody, so whoever is ready to go next, hop in.
Here, I can go ahead and go. So hi, my name's Hannah. I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I went to Sarah Lawrence College in Westchester County for New York. We all majored in liberal arts. I am a G3, and I, like May, will defend my thesis pretty shortly here and go back to med school. So yeah, hopefully don't die in that process. No, it's going to be great. I'm not that worried. No, and let's see here. I have studied diagnostics for parasitic infections. And that is my interest is diagnostic development for low resource settings, mostly for parasites, but like did some COVID work like everybody probably has done at this point. Clinically,
Wait.
I'm interested in infectious disease.
But it's being recorded. That means I don't have to go. I want to stay at home.
Let's see here. I like to swim. I love hanging out with dogs, and over the pandemic,
I'm gonna just sit at the table over there.
Hey, everyone, if you could check your mics are muted, please. We're getting a little bit of background from one of the participants. Thank you. Thanks, Hannah. Sorry.
No, thanks, Corey. That's great. And then, yeah, so that's it for me. So Elise, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Elise. I'm from Naperville, Illinois. And then I went to WashU for undergrad. I majored in women, gender, and sexuality studies and biology, so 2 separate things. I'm currently in M2. I'm in my dedicated period for step 1. Research interest, I haven't actually started in a lab yet. We've done some lab rotations, but most likely going into public health. I'm really interested in community-based participatory research, and no clinical interest yet. Have no idea, but I will. So yeah. Other passions, I really like to play badminton when I can. I really like hiking too. And I think it's just Juliana.
Hi, I'm Juliana. I'm from Chicago. My undergrad institution is UIC, and my major was neuroscience. Current phase is I'm a G1, which means I'm in the first year of my PhD, and I've completed the first 2 years of medical school and taken step 1 with the great pleasure of having it for a score as opposed to pass fail. My research interests are virology and respiratory viral infections. That was a coincidence with the pandemic, so it's quite fortuitous for me right now. But specifically, I really like infecting cells from your nose because my clinical interests are ENT. So I work with an ENT and infect it with virus and then have fun doing that. And then hopefully not get myself sick because that would be a problem. So other passions, I really love my dog. She's not here right now, unfortunately, because I can't convince my PI to bring my dog in the lab, but we're working on it. It's a work in progress. Other interests, I like to go to the gym, but I haven't had a lot of time to do that lately. But I think that about sums it up. If you have UIC specific questions related to MD-PhD, I definitely can maybe answer some of them.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so we're gonna get started now with some information. Okay, so what is a physician scientist, right? So these are physicians that choose to, basically participate in research as a major part of their practice and their work. So this includes researchers whose goals are generally to better understand and treat human disease, but that's not necessarily always the case. They play a critical role in translating discoveries in the laboratory, public health interventions, clinical research and trials, and bringing that to patients. So here we have a a few famous physician scientists here. Up here on the top left is Francis Collins. He was the former head of the NIH. He was known for leading the Human Genome Project. Here we have Nancy Andrews. She was the first female dean at the Duke School of Medicine, and she made some major breakthroughs in congenital iron deficiency anemia. Here we have Mae Jemison. In addition to being the first African-American woman in space, she also had a tenure with the Peace Corps, where she served as a chief medical officer, and she currently does research with DARPA looking to make human travel to other stars possible. Here we have Dr. Fauci, which I think everyone has probably gotten pretty familiar with in the last couple years. And last here we have Ben Bars. He discovered the role of glial cells within the brain, and he was the first openly transgender scientist in the National Academy. Okay, so types of MD-PhD programs. In the US, there's about 123 MD-PhD programs, and there are 50 NIH-supported medical scientist training programs. So basically, every MSTP program is an MD-PhD program, but not every MD-PhD is an MSTP program. And this NIH designation basically comes with a grant that helps fund the students and helps fund the program. Okay, so MD-PhDs have really flexible career paths. So the majority of us end up in academia, where we end up running a lab, seeing some patients, having some administrative duties, and a combination of all of those things. Some other outcomes for us are going into different government agencies like the NIH, the CDC, or other national research labs. MD-PhDs also go into industry and work for pharmaceutical companies and biotech, and then a smaller portion go into private practice. So this is some data from one of the more recent larger studies tracking the outcomes of students who graduated from MD-PhD programs, and you can see the largest chunk went into academia full time. You see the next largest chunk went into private practice, about 15%. And then the rest is pretty diverse. So some were in academia part-time, some were working in research institutes. There's a number that went into industry, federal agencies, and then consulting, law, finance. So really a wide array of options after training and graduation. Okay, so we saw in the registration and some of the questions, there were some questions about the timeline for MD-PhD education. So this is kind of the classic 2-4-2 split. So you start off with your first 2 years of medical school, which are your preclinical years, where you're kind of more doing your textbook kind of learning, and then that ends when you take your first board exam. And then from there comes the PhD training, where you spend 3 to 6 years, typically about 4, researching some question, you formulate your thesis, you publish some papers, and then you come back for your M3 year, where you have your standard clerkships. That's where you'll go on to surgery, internal medicine, pediatrics, etc. And then you have your M4 year, where people like Corey are finishing up some clinical requirements, applying a residency, and matching at the end. So this was another question we had in the registration was how does one afford coming into an MD-PhD program, and how does one deal with financing that and all of that? So most MD-PhD programs are fully funded. So that means you don't have to take on any debt to pay for tuition. And this is every MSTP program is fully funded. Most other MD-PhD programs are, but their stipend may vary. but every MSTP program comes with a tuition scholarship and a competitive stipend. The amount and the duration of the financial support can vary a little bit from institution to institution. And for most places, this also includes funds that support the students to travel and present at national conferences. And then another source of support, which is more, more as part of the training as well, is that the students can apply for independent fellowships and different predoctoral awards. And those look really nice on your CV when you're going in for your next jobs. Okay, so now we want to tell you a little bit about our institution. So the University of Illinois College of Medicine is one of 3 Illinois medical schools with the Carnegie Foundation. So that's the highest research activity designation, the highest category. We are one of 5 medical schools that's both within R1 and ranked among the top 50 colleges and universities on the Social Mobility Index. And we are among the top 20 in a 2010 Annals of Internal Medicine study, the social mission of medical education, ranking the schools. We are also one of 9 medical schools in the country located on a campus with the full array of other health profession schools. That includes dentistry, pharmacy, nursing, public health. We are also the alma mater of one in 6 physicians currently practicing in Illinois. And we are also the alma mater of 2/3 of the African American, Latino, Latina, and Native American physicians in Illinois. And we are the largest contributor among U.S. medical schools to increase the Latino and Latina physicians over the last few decades. Now a little bit more about our MSTP program. So we currently have about 100 students. We have had some pretty significant growth in the last 10 years. I can say from the year that I joined, it was about 8 of us, and this year's M1 class was 15, and last year's M1 class was 18. So we have a really diverse student body coming from all over the country. About half of our students are from Illinois or the Midwest. And we get about 350 apps a year for 15 NIH-funded positions. And then a few years back, the NIH renewed our training grant for an additional 10 years. On average, our students take about 8 years to graduate, and the PhD can vary from 3 to 5 years. So a little bit more about our program. So I mentioned a few minutes ago the general timeline for training. So we follow the 2-4-2 model, where we have 2 years of medical school, 4 years PhD, and then we come back to medical school. And the initial medical school years involve 2 to 3 lab rotations to help identify a PhD mentor. So those are typically done before we join the program and in the summer in between the M1 and M2 years. We have a number of really nice features here in the program. So we get one-on-one advising with our program directors. We have 4 directors who have different roles and different specialty areas across the College of Medicine. So we get additional mentorship from them. We have a house advising system. So as we've grown larger in size, we've split up our program into houses, kind of like a Harry Potter kind of a thing. And so that allows for us to get some vertical integration among the program. So kind of mixes up students from all phases of the program, and we get together, and talk about different things like, how to kind of wrap up a paper to get it through publication, dealing with challenging situations with mentors, picking a lab, things like that. And we also have a number of clinical opportunities to stay involved with during graduate training. We have an annual retreat, which is always a ton of fun. We have a really competitive stipend. I can say personally, living in Chicago with our stipend has been perfect. It's definitely enough to get by here. We get a full tuition and fee waiver for the entire length of our training, so the full 8 years. Something, I guess, unique for Chicago, for those of you that are not from around here, this also includes our CTA pass. That's our the Chicago Transit Authority, so that's the public transportation. So we get access to that for free, as well as being a student in the MSTP. And I mentioned earlier that we're one of the few schools in the country that has all the other health science colleges right on the same campus. And so what that means is we have the opportunity to do research in the School of Public Health, in the College of Dentistry, the College of Pharmacy, which is really nice and really opens things up for some cool projects and cool collaborations. So, you know, just like I've been saying, we have a number of different opportunities that we can pursue for research, and you can see that reflected in the programs that our students have pursued their PhDs in. So we have a number of different areas: cancer biology, cell biology, regenerative medicine, microbiology, all of these things, neuroscience, we have biomedical engineering, public health projects, all of this, and basically almost anything you can imagine, you can find here. So now looking at the outcomes from our program. So this is looking at data from roughly the past 15 years. We have internal medicine is the most commonly matched specialty, and that's generally true for the general medical student graduates as well. And there's a number of different options as well, having gone through MD-PhD programs. There are research-focused residency tracks, which are becoming more popular. And we've had very, very strong match outcomes for our students. And everyone is always matching into their top-ranked places. And then our program is looking at some long-term outcomes of graduates. We're kind of tracking that, but if you think about how it takes 8 years to finish the program, and then 3 to 7 years after, it kind of takes a while to collect that data. Okay, so other outcomes and strengths of our program. About 60% of our students receive this additional independent funding, which is a really high success rate. We have a really strong alumni involvement in our program. We have an annual alumni lecture from a prominent faculty in academia, and we have a new alumni panel that we've created that comes in and helps for residency selection and different advices for careers. And as I mentioned, you know, we've been growing over the past few years, and we keep getting more slots from the NIH. So we're well supported within the college, and the NIH seems to like what we're doing too. Okay, so now that we've talked about a lot of numbers and statistics and things, we also like to have fun. Living in Chicago is amazing. There's so many different things to do here, whether it's things to do for yourself, like taking a bike ride across the lake, or getting involved in the community, attending conferences together. There's all sorts of things to do, and we definitely like to take full advantage of it. And now probably our biggest strength in our program is our community. You know, you'll hear a little bit more about that when we get into the questions section. But our community here is so strong. Everyone is so supportive. I mean, I could even give you an example. Corey, who's on this call, when I was interviewing for the program and decided to come here, she let me stay on her couch, or not on her couch, a really nice airbed, so I could stay an extra day in Chicago and look for apartments. That was like a super long time ago, but she had like never met me. And you know, these are the kinds of things that just like a tiny example of the community and support that we get from each other here in our program. So here's just a few links and some resources you all can look at if you want to learn more about MD-PhD training. We'd recommend joining the American Physician Scientists Association. You can get, different emails and information from them, and different mentorship opportunities. The AAMC has a good site on MDPhD information. And then, of course, be on the lookout for additional panels from us. And we're working on starting a mentorship program where we'll pair an MSTP student with a student interested in pursuing the MD-PhD path to kind of help them along the way. All right, so now we're going to move on to some moderated questions and answers. So we'll just kind of go through and we'll all kind of give an answer to these next few questions, and then we'll have plenty of time for everyone else to ask their questions. So the first one is, why did you choose to apply to an MD-PhD program? Who wants to start us off here?
I will. I have like a love-hate relationship with this question. If any of you are listening and thinking about applying and this question stresses you out, that's okay. Let it be known. You will get asked it a lot, and eventually you will find your answer. And for me, it's that I was pretty sure that I wanted to go to med school, and I felt like that was like the right path for me. I was on it. And then in college, it was a required course that I had to take a research class. And I'd never really thought about doing research. I didn't really know much about it because I went to, really terrible Texas public school. And then I went to Harvard and everyone was a genius and I knew nothing. And I was just like not aware. I didn't have knowledge or background info or anything. So I had no idea what I was getting into, but I took this class because I had to, and I ended up loving it. And then a fellow classmate who was in that lab with me applied to MD-PhD programs and was like, hey, it seems like you're really enjoying this. Like, have you considered this as an option? And I didn't even know it had existed. And so it was like a whole new world of options opened up to me after I tried research for the first time. And I really enjoyed it. And I felt like it was a cool, like hybrid scientific and creative outlet. And I didn't want to give it up after that. So I decided to do the combined path so I could have the best of both worlds. But I really owed it to people sharing info with me and letting me know that the option existed to like have it both ways. So that's what pushed me into it.
Awesome. Thanks, May. Anyone else want to take a crack at it?
I had a really similar experience to May. I went to terrible public school in Tennessee, and then got to college, and just it wasn't required, but I did like a fun project with a quorum sensing bacteria, and just had a really good time hanging out in the lab, and stayed and worked all summer, and just felt very at home there. And so I don't know, I just like had never had. I'd never been happier than my first summer in the lab. And I was like, well, I guess I need to acknowledge that this is a part of my life now. And like May, I kind of already decided I wanted to go to med school, and then was like, wait, there's a magical opportunity to do both of these things. And even though it's kind of longer, it just, it was worth it for me.
Thanks, Anna. Anyone else?
I'm just going to put a spin on this question. I can tell you why I didn't initially apply to an MD-PhD program and then changed my application in November. I would not recommend that, first of all. Try to know at the beginning of the cycle what your plans of life are. That makes it easier for you. But I applied just straight MD at first, and that is because I thought I wasn't good enough for an MD-PhD program, because I worked with an MD-PhD program, or sorry, an MD-PhD student who already graduated from our program, and he was just like super stellar, and I just didn't see myself as the type of person to apply. But then one of our directors, our current directors, was actually my PI, and she basically asked me why I didn't apply MD-PhD, because I totally would fit into the program. And that kind of changed my whole kind of worldview, just to like, wow, I am good enough. So I guess I'm saying this story because I think a lot of times saying you're an MD-PhD has this weird weight to it for people that don't really know the specifics of the program. I'm here to say that you are good enough and you should definitely consider applying. And if you feel like you are not good enough, you stop thinking like that, you are good enough.
Awesome. Thanks, Juliana. Who else do we have? Corey and Elise, if you want to throw in your 2 cents here. If not, I can go as well.
I can go. Yeah, sorry, I've been typing away in the chat box.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I see that.
No worries, no worries. I'm happy to answer a question, whatever forum people feel more comfortable with. Why did I choose an MD-PhD? Oh my God, I stumbled into it. I think that's kind of been addressed. I thought I had to buff my CV with research. So I was like, I'm never going to get in if I don't do research. And then I ended up loving it. So I think you definitely need to love research to do an MD-PhD program. I think that is like a smart reason to be applying to one of them. And it will come out in your review process if you aren't pursuing this because of your love of research on top of clinical practice. I chose it because I didn't want to give either one up. There are other paths where you could do research just by being a clinician. There's tons of clinicians that do research, so that is something to consider for people. But the training that you get during the PhD is something that clinicians do not receive, and it enables us to have access to certain resources, including funding and like obviously a community of people that really I think is an invaluable part of why this program is worth the extra time. I also chose it because of the flexibility. Like I knew I wanted to become a mom. I knew I wanted to do research. I knew I loved teaching. So to me, it was like, no matter what, I'm going to have these 2 skill sets that I can apply however I need to apply them to make it fit in my life and whatever I decide down the line for myself. So those were some of the lucrative points. And then obviously it was a very nice perk that we don't pay for medical school.
Thanks, Corey. Elise, do you want to go?
I think, yeah, most of it has been said. I was really like not sure about research when I first entered into medical or into undergrad. Definitely the draw of not paying for medical school is a huge one, and that was initially why I was considering it. That and like the military route. And then I think once I really got into my major, it was kind of like a more liberal arts major. I saw kind of a need to link the two. So public health became like a really big option for me. And yeah, that's like why I ended up choosing it.
Awesome, thanks. I'll go quickly here so we don't spend too much time on this. But you know, I was an engineering major in undergrad, and I got involved with research my second year in college and absolutely loved it. When I was doing my master's, one of my courses was this like nanomedicine course, and I just got really struck by this figure that they presented on the efficacy of cancer treatments over the past 80 years, and saw like what a small increase that was. And I mean, I don't do cancer research or anything like that, but that just really like, that was one of the things that kind of pushed me into, you know, really taking the plunge, because I loved doing the research that I was doing, and I knew I wanted to go into medicine. And that's when I really felt like that was the path to go for me. So for our next question, I think this should help answer some people's questions in the chat. What type of clinical and research opportunities did you participate in before starting the program? Who wants to start us off?
I can go. I didn't really start research until pretty much, it was like the summer before my 3rd year of undergrad. And yeah, that was mostly it. And then I continued that research throughout I did 1 postgrad year. So I did 3 years in that lab, and it was like a wet lab. We studied newborns and necrotizing enterocolitis. I didn't personally find it to be that rewarding. I didn't enjoy my time in that lab. And when I did apply, I made it very clear in my application that I didn't want to do wet lab and I want to do public health research, but I didn't have any public health research background. I did a thesis in my major. It was mostly like sexuality studies and the church, but again, not public health related at all. So yeah, I would say like, if you guys are worried about like things not lining up or like whatnot, definitely you have to be able to understand and explain your research really well in the interviews, because that did get me through my interview process. But I would say you don't have to have any experience in the research that you want to do in the future. Clinically, I did some volunteering in a hospital, honestly. Didn't think it was worth my time in the end. Maybe I shouldn't have done it. I had mostly things, so I went to college in St. Louis. We had a couple of like AIDS clinics, and I spent a lot of time volunteering with other organizations. So yeah, I wouldn't say like for the most part I had the most research experience and like the top papers or a lot of clinical experience. Honestly, I had like very minimal shadowing and like very minimal volunteer work. Like I couldn't talk about volunteering at all in my application because it was like front desk work, and I was like, I don't know if I can really care about this stuff and write about it. But I think it did help that like the stuff that I did do, like I tutored at a prison. I was really involved in a prison network and like tutoring and education, higher education in prisons. Like I wrote a lot about that in my application and people were interested in it. Sorry, that kind of went on a tangent, but yeah.
Thank you, Elise.
When I came in, I had some clinical shadowing and then some volunteerism in the hospital. I think when you're thinking about how you want to build your CV for application to a graduate program, they want to see that you have looked at the things you think you are applying for. So for example, MD-PhD, I knew I needed to have at least some exposure in the clinic so I could say, I definitely know I want to do medicine. But what's funny is it doesn't matter if it's in the right type of medicine that you end up wanting to pursue. So I did a lot of ortho shadowing, and what I could tell you is I definitely didn't want to do ortho. So, which is like bone stuff, in case anybody doesn't know, gross. Same thing for research. Now that approach, that one I was like, I just need to do it because they expect it on my CV. And if I could go back as where I am now and be wise and tell young Corey like what to do, for one, that was the right move because I found what I loved. So that was cool. But always, always, always pursue what you're passionate about. And those are the things that are going to help you get where you actually should be going. So for example, someone in the chat was talking about being afraid of their scores. You know, don't worry about that. To a point, you need to have like acceptable scores, but follow your passions, and then you'll be able to talk about that in your letter or talk about that in your essays, like Elise was saying, and people pick up on that. So yeah, so my research experience, I was able to talk about it passionately. I had no publications, but I was able to tell them why I was jazzed about it, and that excites them because it shows them I'm committed to a career where my MD and PhD would be put to use.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. Anyone else want to go?
You want to go, Juliana?
You can go, it's fine.
So let's see here. I did a lot of things. So in undergrad, I worked at a free clinic in the South Bronx, and that was like the majority of my clinical experience. And I didn't really have a ton after undergrad, and I have a 5-year gap between undergrad and when I started the program. So I know like somebody asked about non-traditional applicants, and like if you got weird gaps or like just if it's been a while since you've done something, don't be afraid of that. Everybody understands that like time is finite, and you have to just do the best you can with the opportunities that you can make for yourself, I guess. And then like research wise, I studied C2TA, which is MHC class 2's transcription factor in undergrad, so like pretty heavy genetics research there for a while. And then I worked as a tech in an immunology lab doing type 1 diabetes research on B cells for a couple of years. And then I did some qualitative research in Ethiopia on healthcare access, and then and then I started studying parasites in South America. I've done a lot of research, and I've just like been exploring. And I think the big thing that I would encourage anybody is just keep going and just keep looking for things that interest you. And like if this is the right thing, it will smack you in the face eventually, and you'll have to accept it.
Thanks, Anna. Did you want to go now, Juliana?
Sure. Let's see. What clinical experiences did I have? I was an EMT for a long time because there was a class at UIC that I took. I took it for funsies, and then I realized I really like medicine. And that's kind of what started this whole shebang for me. And then for research, I kind of did research just because when you're an undergrad at UIC, they just kind of tell you to do it. So there really wasn't genuine motivation to start. But then I started and I loved it. And I especially loved when I could do research that was also paralleling what I did and saw on the field as an EMT, and also in the ER when I worked as a tech there. And so I just kind of stumbled into this path. I realized I liked research through medicine and want to be a physician that can apply both those skills, you know, in the lab, but also treating patients as well.
Awesome, thanks. Are we missing anyone for this question, or I think everyone has gone?
I think it was me.
Okay.
I'll just really, I have my camera off, sorry. Okay, I'll just be really brief. I told you a little bit, I just kind of showed up in research because I had to, and then loved it and just stuck around in that lab indefinitely. And I actually was quiet this whole time looking for my resume that I put on my med school app because I couldn't remember what I did. And apparently I did like almost nothing, for the record. And like, I want to be the person to say this, and like this sentiment has been shared briefly before, but whatever you think you quote have to have or have to be able to do this, it's not true. And like, I had probably a grand total of like maybe 30 hours of clinical experience and one single lab, and I didn't have a paper. I never published anything. Like by any metric, most people would have looked at that and said like, how are you going to become a doctor or a scientist or in anything? And I made it happen. I had like other sort of education type science things in there. And I was in like some organizations and did like student leadership stuff, and that all worked out for me. But I say all of this to say, you can have a pretty low GPA and a kind of bad MCAT score and a probably smaller than average resume and still make it work. And whoever you are and whatever situation you're in, you deserve to be able to do this too. So I don't want you to hear all of these amazing things and think that you can't match up to that, because you can. And we all have our own unique story and like came to this in our own way, and they're all good and they all count, and it's good that they're different. So please don't see that as a weakness. I think it's an asset, and it has worked in my favor and many of our favors. And I hope that you will see value in your own path and take advantage of that too.
Some great advice, May. Thank you for that. Okay, I also, like May, I didn't have very much clinical, especially by the time my applications went in. I had really only done a little bit of volunteering at a hospital. And I spent my year while I was applying doing clinical research. So that's where I got most of my clinical experience, but I couldn't really talk about that very much in my application because I had just started that position. And it was really more research heavy, even though it was clinical research, it really still was more of a research thing. And then I really only worked in one lab. I worked in the same lab when I was a sophomore in college, and then I stuck around and I did a master's there because I wanted to see if that was something I could see myself doing full time. You know, so I had maybe like 9 months or so where I was only doing research, and then I went on and did clinical research for a year. So for our next question, and there's probably going to be a theme here, is how does your undergraduate research relate to your current interests or research? I'll go real quick here, and I will say that it has nothing to do with my current interest or research. I was working on basically recombinant protein engineering, and that has nothing to do with what I'm doing now, where I study IBD and alcoholic liver disease. Would anyone else like to chime in?
Sure, I'll say something. So my undergrad research was in limb regeneration and axolotls, which if you don't know what they are, they're an aquatic salamander that looks like a Pokemon, and they have all their gills sticking out of their head. They're very cool. And they're the only vertebrate animal in the world that can regenerate their limbs, but we still kind of don't know why. So all of my undergrad work was figuring out how those arms grow back and if we could maybe take some of that capability and translate it into human medicine. So it was, at the time, it didn't feel like it. It was very early stage stuff because they didn't even have the genome sequenced until a couple of years ago. But I loved it. And I thought, I just felt like a little mad scientist, like trying to grow a body in a dish. And it was the coolest thing ever. So I really wanted to stay in like regenerative aquatic species stuff. And that is not at all what happened. I transitioned over to mouse work, and now I work in wound healing, which in a way is regenerative. That's true. But the goals and strategies and techniques and everything were all wildly new to me. And I basically started from square zero in terms of mouse work and all of those things. So I hope you all will get the idea that like what you did before does not in any way have to inform or restrict what you do here. And the same is true that whatever your research is during your PhD doesn't have to define what you do later. It doesn't have to determine your specialty. It doesn't mean that that's the kind of research you're going to do your whole life. To me, the reason we do this, like the point of getting a PhD, is not to just become an expert in one thing, but also to learn how to be a good scientist. And once you know how to do that, you can do it in any subject that becomes important to you. So it was kind of a 360 for me. And I'm very happy about it because now I know twice as much stuff as I would have otherwise known, which is pretty cool.
Thanks, May. Anyone else want to chime in here?
I did neuroscience research, ended up doing a neuroscience PhD. One thing I will say is like everyone loves the story. Like they want, getting into the MD-PhD to be like the climax of the story. Like now I'm going to accomplish my dreams, but they don't care what direction you're going in. They want to know that you're going in the direction of research. So like if your story is, I started in research related to bacteria, but now I'm interested in cancer. And then they can be like, wow, we have tons of cancer researchers here. We should give them the opportunity, so it's, you can start one place and go in a totally different direction. I'm doing that right now. Like my PhD is in neuroscience and everybody loves talking to me about that. And these are people who are like dealing with women's uteri all the time. So that's, very, very different things, but you can take your research and apply it because the skills you build are more than just like the knowledge base, right? So my neuroscience knowledge base, I also have like all these other skills of like how to run a lab, how to run a project, how to write a grant, how to establish protocols, how to do quality checks, how, those are skills that are widely applicable. And it's the same thing goes for when you are getting into the MD-PhD program. If you show commitment through your research or you show commitment through a volunteer activity, all that kind of stuff. But I'm going to bring the neuroscience in. There's like a cool way to find a niche, and I think I'm going to find it. So you heard it here first, maybe one of the other ones before, but yeah.
You go, Corey. Yeah, I'm sure you'll find it. Anyone else want to go here? If not, we can move on to our next question. All right, we'll move on. So for those currently in or who have completed their PhD, what was your experience like?
Wait, am I the only one? Oh no, currently in. Okay, I was like, am I the only
yeah,
one?
I mean, we have a few who are almost done. You know, Hannah and May are defending soon, so
They're on the verge. Yeah,
not just you, Corey. Although we love to hear from you.
Why don't you start, Corey?
Hot mic. Oh, I can start. Okay, hold on. Currently in. What was the experience like? Okay, man, the PhD is tough, but it's also amazing. Mine started off really great, got a little like messy in the middle, and then it was like I was so ready to go back to the clinic by the end of my PhD, and I think that's a very natural evolution for MD PhDs. I really loved the process of developing my project and of being at the bench. And quite frankly, one of the most rewarding experience of it for me was mentoring undergraduate students who are interested in research and or interested in a career as a physician, and helping them kind of like navigate that process. It was also a way for me to have enough time to do longitudinal projects outside of my PhD project within the Department of Medical Education. And I really loved that. So, you know, even when times are tough, there's always something to like remind you, you're like, this is why I'm doing this, because teaching's awesome, because science is awesome, because the patient in front of you deserves it, you know? So that's what it was like for me.
Can I go next?
Yeah, go for it.
Thanks, Corey. Okay, I love this question. I don't know what all of your perceptions are of research and of being in a lab, but what I have seen has been widely variable across people from different institutions and different places. And my personal experience has been top-notch, 10 out of 10, 1000% wonderful in every way. And I know that that sounds crazy and doesn't happen that often, but I credit it partly to myself because I insisted on choosing my lab entirely because of the mentor. I did not care if they had said, you're going to stare at the wall and watch paint dry for 7 years straight. I would have said, aye, Captain, if it was the right person, because I wanted to learn how to be a good mentor, how to be a good leader, how to be a good advocate, how to ask good questions, how to answer them well, how to write well, how to handle conflict. And you don't learn those things from your project. You learn those things from your mentor. The project is just the vessel. You know, it's the chip, but the person you work with is the salsa, and you're just there to really get the goods. The way you get them is not that important. So for me, it was 1000% a decision about who I wanted to spend my time with. What kind of leader are they? How do they deal with challenges? What happens if I mess up? All those things. So because I insisted on doing that, I feel like I got very lucky and ended up with a really good mentor who's super compatible with me. And the other half of it is that she's an awesome person and has taught me amazing things. And so it's been easy to flourish and to do well and to feel successful because I've had nothing but constant support the entire time. So I think the single most critical decision you can ever make in a research experience is who you're going to work with. If that decision goes well, the rest of the things are much easier than they would otherwise be. And now that I am at the cusp of being done with this, like I'm literally 3 weeks away from turning in my thesis, like pretty much it's over. And I cannot think of one single solitary thing I would go back and change. And I think that's amazing to be able to say that. And I give my mentor most of the credit, but I also want to say it out loud so that you hear from someone that the PhD can be fun and not that stressful and good and like overall very positive. And if there is anything you remember me saying today, I hope it is that A, you deserve it and you're great. And B, if you're going to pick a mentor, pick one you like and the project will follow, I promise. That is my grad school message to you all.
That's
that's
fantastic. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Anna.
No, I was just going to say it's like a hard one to follow up on, but like I have a very similar story to May's. Like I have kind of a non-traditional PhD situation. I was able to bring in a collaborator from outside to help support me through this project, and who had mentored me in my master's. We had a grant together, and so I was able to kind of bring everybody together on this. And I'm currently mentored at UIC by a bacteriologist, though I study parasitology, because she is the bomb. And at the end of the day, like mentorship is so important. And I think anytime anybody like younger in the program asks like, oh, like I'm interested in this, but I don't like I'm like, don't do it. If you don't like the faculty member, that's what's going to make or break your PhD experience. So yeah, mentorship is clutch.
And if anyone here has questions about, our specific projects or, looking for mentors and things like that, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will do our best to help you on your path. So does anyone else want to talk about their PhD experience? I can give a slightly less rosy bit of a story that hopefully has a happy ending. Oh, does someone want to?
You should tell your story, Nate.
Yeah, so I joined the lab because I was very interested in the technology that this lab was working with, and I had done a rotation with them my first summer before I started medical school, and I really liked it. I thought the technology was really cool, and I basically spent the next couple of years just like thinking about different ideas and projects that I could come up with using this technology. But I wasn't the right mentor. And as the others on the panel have mentioned, that is so important. And basically near the end of my first year, right as the COVID pandemic was starting, kind of reached a breaking point, and realized I had to move on from my lab. And so I switched labs a year in, and I started at the new lab right after the Illinois stay-at-home order was lifted. Had to like deal with like starting in a new lab and like not seeing people's faces for the first time, which was weird. I know we're all kind of used to that now, but it was kind of a strange time. And I'm co-advised now. I have wonderful mentors. They are so supportive and so they're just so supportive. They really have like tried to put me in a position to succeed, and are mentors that I feel like I can trust, and who actually have my interests in mind. So I think those are things you really have to look for when you get an opportunity, or when you have the chance to pick your own mentor, is looking for someone that's really invested in your success, and not someone who is more interested in making their trainees fit into a kind of a cookie cutter mold that they try to have everyone who passes through them go through. If no one else for this question, then we can move on to the next one. Okay, and this is the last question. I promise we have a good amount of time to answer people's questions. I know I see the chat going up, but we'll have time to answer your questions in the chat too. All right. Anyone want to go here? What are your long-term career goals? And this could be a quick one.
I think this is actually a very hard question, not a quick one at all. But I definitely want to go into infectious disease, whether that's going to be an academic or a private or somewhere in between. I don't know where that's going to be hosted for me, but like, I love parasites. I also love caring for HIV positive individuals. I think it's a really interesting patient population, and I think the patients themselves bring a lot. And so I that's what I want to do with my life.
Thanks, Hannah. Anyone else want to say what they're thinking about?
Well, everybody keep your fingers crossed for me that I match into OB-GYN, because that's really what I want to do with my future right now. It's hard not to feel nervous when you don't have a sense of control. So that's one of mine. But the other thing, I've gotten really good at this elevator pitch since I've just gone through interview season. But where I want to be when I am finally settled into this very long training to achieve career is I want to be in an academic institution with participation in the actual practice of medicine in the hospital and in a practice of my own, probably still through the hospital. I want to be running a lab. I don't know if that is at the bench or if it's in public health or if it's in advocacy, but those are the things that matter the most to me. And I want to be participating in medical education of some sort, because training the next generation of physicians is something that I think is one of the most important contributions that the bright minds that go into medicine can give back. And how the heck I do all of that while also being a mom is by being a fierce advocate for myself. That is something that takes a lot of practice and a lot of stumbling over your own feet, but it is something that you need to do relentlessly. And it is something that you're going to have to face things where you make sacrifices, you make choices, you push back on people in a way that might make you feel uncomfortable. But it is something that many birthing people have done before. And it is something that we will continue to do. And we just have to keep making them rewrite the rules so that it's a little bit more attainable for us. And as MD-PhDs, we have some pretty awesome leverage to be able to do exactly what we want to do when we want to do it. So yeah, that's the goal. Here's to hoping I can keep up the stamina.
You will, you got this. If anyone does, it's you, Corey.
Seconded, for real.
Anyone want to go here? I mean, I guess I was projecting my own answer for this, where for me it's pretty short, because I'm not quite sure what I want my career to look like. I definitely want to be a clinician and a scientist, but what split, what specialty, even what research area, I have no idea what I'll end up doing. So I'm just trying to get the best training that I can until I figure it out. All right, so if no one else wants to go here, let's open it up for some live Q&A. If anyone wants to bring any questions up on the chat, I know we've had some already, but we can kind of bring them up to like full discussion.
Let's because a couple people have talked about work-life balance, and I think that that's like a pretty clutch question. Because this is such a long training program, and depending on when you start, you're either going to give up all of your 20s or like a good chunk of your 20s and a good chunk of your 30s plus residency, which will be the rest of your 30s. And then you can't put your life on hold and do this program. Like it's not possible. I mean, it is possible, but I don't know what will be left for you at the end of it and to what end, because like this is your life and you only get one shot. And so how do you do it all? I think May and Corey have both given good answers to this. If you just have to prioritize the things that are important to you, the people that are important to you. Like when something is happening in someone's life and they matter to you, you say, I'm going to get a shitty score on this quiz, or I'm not going to get this experiment done, or whatever the thing is, because there will be another opportunity to take a test or another opportunity to do an experiment. Like, that is infinite. But the people that are important to you are, you know, you can only be there for them when they need you. And so just surrounding yourself with people that are important, like that are there for you, is really important. That was very rambly.
No, not at all. I think that's super important. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I already said this in the chat, but I'm going to say it again because I really care about it. And I've been saying it at anyone who will listen to me for 6+ years now. You're all here for a reason. You care about this. You love it. It's important to you for some reason. And you know what that reason is. And all I will say is that nothing that you love and care about is supposed to make you miserable. That is never true. So when you come into this, or whatever path you choose for yourself, you chose it because you care, and it should care back. And you don't have to sacrifice yourself entirely to a thing in order to get some benefit out of it. And you deserve to be happy and stay happy. And at the end of the day, the only thing that you're stuck with for the rest of your life is you. So all the other stuff that happens is temporary, and there will be another thing and another opportunity and another whatever it is. But you will be the best at everything you do when you are at your best. And that means putting yourself before all your other stuff, and, you know, caring that you have a good time and enjoy your life and fill it with things and people and places and experiences that matter to you, instead of sacrificing all of the time into something that would not sacrifice itself for you. So we all care about this, but at the end of the day, it is a giant system full of many people, and it will go on with or without each and every one of us, but you are all you've got to guarantee that you made your life what you wanted it to be. So that should be your top priority all the time. And I promise you can have a ton of fun and do whatever you want and still get through this. I have done more cool stuff in the last 6 years than I probably will do in my whole life combined. So I encourage you to enjoy it and have a good time. You deserve it.
Awesome, May. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, and just to put in a quick plug for us, it's pretty easy to do lots of cool and fun things here in Chicago. So when you're thinking about applying to programs, definitely want to consider us.
Yeah, sorry, I want to echo that, and then also respond to a question from Karen, because I think this is also pretty important. I think overall, it really depends on the program too. For me, like UIC was a big option because clearly a lot of students care about balance. I honestly didn't meet that many people when I interviewed here and when I was talking to students who just wanted to throw away their entire life just to focus on research in school, which is pretty much why I chose the program. And also it seemed very open to, yeah, like having kids during the program. I think there are a couple of us in my year at least who are planning on doing that. And then to Karen's question, the big difference between MD PhD and then doing research on the side for your MD. MD students, I would say at least a couple that I've talked to who are doing research during your MD years, at least your first 2 years, you spend a lot of time doing that research, whereas I haven't touched any research when I'm in like my curriculum, like the MD curriculum. And I wanted it that way. I really wanted to set aside my 4 years to do my PhD and do that research and not have to touch it during, yeah, my first 2 years.
Awesome. All right. And I see there's some discussion going on here about how hard are clinical rotations when we go back. So I have not gone back to clinical rotations. I can say, you know, Corey has, but just a brief thing is I haven't had as much clinical exposure as I would have liked during my PhD, but I went back a couple of weeks ago to a free clinic that we can volunteer at and saw a few patients for the first time in a couple of years. I was super nervous about it, and I was pleasantly surprised at how much I still remembered. So I think that stuff comes back. And if anyone else wants to chime in on that, someone with more credibility than me who has seen 2 patients in 2 years.
Nonsense, man. That's all I did during the PhD. You know, it's hard to juggle. It's the juggle struggle of being an MD PhD. But what I will say is it's like very, very normal for everyone to get very nervous when they're at the end of their PhD and needing to go back. We have a course, which is really like a crash course to just like remind you of the things. So like put the terminology back in your head. And then what I was saying earlier, I think to somebody in the chat was that, you know, yes, you've spent 4 years not interacting with the medical knowledge as much, but it's not like you interacted with the medical knowledge one time and memorized it and regurgitated it on a test. That is not how medical school works. So it's kind of like riding a bike. It comes back. I mean, it's rough in the beginning. You're like wobbly. You definitely don't have confidence, but then you get into it and you're like, oh, okay, I know what I'm doing. Not to mention, everybody doesn't know what they're doing when they start their clinicals. So, you know, whether you took 4 years off for a PhD or you just took your exams, you are going to go into the clinic and you're going to be put in a totally unusual situation where team dynamics are super important, interpersonal skills are super important. And what's really nice is like, you've been trained to answer questions in 1 minute that have multiple options. You know, it's like a multiple choice stuff. You get into the clinic and it's the whole wide world at your feet. You know, it could be a number of things. And what we just did for 4 years was get really good at finding answers. So we actually have a really good skill set to be able to think on our feet, to figure out what the question is, answer the question, and figure out how to present it in an efficient way. So we come in actually with some skills that some of the other students that have gone through the MD aren't as practiced in. So like, sure, maybe we don't have the ability to do rote recall of like the gene that's mutated in this like rare disease, but you know what we can do real quick? Google it. So yeah, it's a learning curve. There's a lot of learning curves in this career path, but it's very doable. And I would say, honestly, I thought we were actually at an advantage.
Can I add something little? Actually, maybe it's not little. It wasn't little for me. Something I've done throughout the PhD, just because I love it and wanted to, is I've done a ton of like peer education and teaching and like taken every opportunity to do that because I love it and it makes me really happy. But it also has helped me a lot because I have been teaching other people all of the concepts from the first 2 years of med school for longer than I studied them. So I have now like more than doubled the curriculum time. Like that was 2 years of med school and I've spent 4.5 teaching it myself. So if you are worried about it, there are ways that you can keep yourself involved if it's something that you're really concerned about. That's not the reason I did it. It was a side perk, but I love to teach. And so that was like an easy way for me to do something that I care about, but also get something out of it.
All right, so I see a question here about when we get into MD-PhD, do we get scholarships for PhD? So your PhD is typically funded by your research advisor. So the lab that you choose to work in, that PI or that professor should have some kind of funding to do their research, and then they can fund you to basically support your stipend while you're doing your research. Now, this is where some of these outside sources of funding can come in. This is why it's nice to apply for outside fellowships with the NIH or other agencies. And here at UIC, if you don't get such a fellowship or any outside funding, the College of Medicine funds your third year of your PhD. So you're at least free for 1 year for your PI. But there's a number of funding mechanisms that you can seek out for yourself, such as NIH F30s. There's also diversity supplements for large R01 grants. So basically, you are funded during your PhD. Any other questions?
The only thing I'm gonna touch on, just because I don't think it's come up yet, is if you're applying to MD-PhD, pay a little bit close attention to if it is not an MSTP program. So if it's just straight MD-PhD, there is variable there's a variable amount that the school is willing to fund the program. So there are some MD-PhD programs where, let's say, they won't cover your M3 and M4 year, you know, and so you really have to, if you're not applying MD-PhD, like if you're really interested in a school for any other particular reason that's not an MSTP, just make sure that all 8 of those years are funded, because I definitely think if you're going to do 8 years at a school, it should definitely be free if it's free at other schools.
Yeah, fantastic point. Definitely keep an eye out for that. You can also Google, you can find a list of all the MSTP programs. I see someone here asking about if you want to get your PhD not through UIC, or if the school doesn't offer the PhD you want, can you get your PhD elsewhere, come back to UIC for medical school? So I'm not so sure about that one. I think the way our program is designed is kind of meant to be, you know, really broad in terms of what you can pursue. So I think the idea would be that whatever PhD you're looking for, you could get here. Is there like a specific discipline you have in mind that you don't think would be allowed?
No, not really. I just heard that like some like programs have their like PhDs super like limited. So I don't know if like every school offers like a super wide range of PhD programs. So
yeah, some MSTPs might be a little more limited in the, you know, sort of the departments or the research areas they offer. So that's definitely something you want to look at when you're applying. I can tell you that's not really the case here at UIC compared to the other programs that I was looking at and interviewing at. You can pretty much come up with whatever you want to do here, and I think Corey just alluded to that in the chat. You can make your situation probably whatever you want, as long as it's, you know, reasonable enough. But I guess that's kind of up to you.
I will add, there's at least 1, if not 2 or 3 students currently in the program who are the first to do a PhD in their particular field. It is like a big hassle and a half, but it can be done. And I don't know how amenable other programs are to doing that, but UIC is very proud of our program, and they give us both a lot of resources and a lot of leeway. And we have really supportive admin who they want you to get to do what you want. So you have to be willing to put in the bulk of the labor to like create the thing. But if you're willing to do the work, they're willing to let you, which I think is pretty awesome. Most places, I can't say for sure, but a lot of places I know would not be that flexible, just because they don't really have any incentive to. So that's something to think about. But I mean, we're about 100 people, and I think there's only 2-ish who have had to do that ever. So you're highly likely to find what you're looking for. But if you don't, you have options.
Awesome. Okay, so we have a question here about international students. I don't know that off the top of my head, but what I will do is I will find out with our program and I will send you an email. So be on the lookout for that.
I also want to add, there may be rules that are not just institution specific, but MSTP specific, because the funding comes from the NIH and they have very strict regulations about citizenship and federal funding. So I am sure that there are MD-PhDs that you can apply to, but not all of them are going to be MSTPs. And you definitely want to make sure about the funding rules, because it may be that you can apply, but you're not eligible for money, which could change your decision making. It would change mine. So just something to think about.
Okay, I see we have a question on any interview tips for MD-PhD programs. So I'm on the admissions committee this year. We've had, I think, 3 interviews so far. I can say just, you know, really just like let your personality come out. You know, I want to hear about why you're excited to do this, why you want to do this. I think we've all kind of said this, but, you know, this is not an easy program. this will be really hard at times, and we want to know that you're aware of what you're getting yourself into, that you've thought about it, that you are committed to doing the research, you're committed to doing the medicine, and that you're committed, to kind of dealing with the challenges that'll come from it. And I really like to see excitement in the people that I interview. I think that's really important. Your passion for your research or your clinical experiences or both. I think that goes a really long way. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in on that.
To everyone's surprise. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead. Someone else go first.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just gonna ask. So are you gonna be the? You said that you're in the admission committee.
That's for you, Nate.
Yeah, I'm on the admissions committee this year.
To give some background for our program and for a lot of others, when you interview, you do some faculty interviews and then some student to student interviews. And that's both for the program's benefit and for yours, so that you can see if you're a good fit with the existing community. But students do not make the final decision, if that is something you're wondering.
No, we do
It's not up to us. We just talk to you and answer your questions and become friends, and that's it. Which is fun and cool and helpful for everyone, but it is by no means a decision-making moment. So the couple things I was going to add about interviews. One is get really good at telling your research story in like a short and interesting way that is not so detail heavy that people can't understand it if they didn't do that thing. I learned this very quickly because basically no one does salamander research. There are lots of reasons. It's annoying and expensive and dirty, and there's a lot of water involved, which is a hassle. So when I went to talk about it, pretty much no one knew anything about anything. So I had to get really good at summarizing it in a way that was like fun and interesting. So that will help you a lot. I can't prove this, but I have a theory that like half the interviews I got were just because people wanted to talk about salamanders. I don't know if that's true or not, but I really think that's what happened. So make your research sound cool in the way that it's cool to you, and that will help. And the other thing is like, know what you want to show about yourself. The interview is the only opportunity you have to like tell parts of your story that don't show up on paper. What are you good at? What do you like? What part of your background is really important to you? What brought you here that you couldn't put in an essay or on an exam score? Like by the time you get to an interview, the numbers don't really matter anymore. Like you're there because they want to know who you are. And that's your one chance face to face or screen to screen, depending, to like really let the pieces of you that you care about the most show up. So take advantage of that. You have a lot more to offer than what you wrote down because we made you.
I'm just going to tangentially bounce off that really quick. One piece of advice that my mentor gave me when I was freaking out because I had an MD-PhD interview, and then many MD-PhD interviews, so I was panicking. And she told me that she does this even for her anything in life. She actually records herself responding to questions she's expecting to hear. So a question you should expect on any MD-PhD interview is, why are you here and why do you want to do this? And so that answer should be just, it cold, and you actually watch yourself responding to it and you correct any like fumbles you have, because you'll sound much more confident and well-versed you practicing it. And plus then it's a little awkward at first to yourself respond to a question via like a video of yourself, but I definitely recommend that. I did that for my interviews and I think it definitely showed through, because a lot of people said I interviewed very well because of that, I think. So I think that's just a little bit more specific advice for interviewing.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I just had to do this again for residency interviews, like spending some time going through, thinking about what you're going to get asked, kind of having that language already loaded up. Definitely don't have to like memorize something from a sheet. Like don't do that, because that's just not, that's not going to come off as genuine. But just having thought through what a smart answer is, or how to navigate something that might be kind of tricky to navigate if you have like a bad score and you don't want to talk about it, things like that. Also practicing, like she said, record yourself, ask your friends to interview you. Also, a lot of places will have a department or in advising or career services that'll give you mock interviews. And that is a really useful tool because then you're not doing it with a friend, you can take it a little more seriously. The only other piece of advice I wanted to give is that interviews are a two-way street. So if you've gotten to the interview, it is because you have a lot to offer, and you now need to also make sure that you are interviewing them just as much. One, it shows that you're coming prepared. Two, it shows that you have like the wherewithal to know that there are opportunities on your doorstep and that you need to make the right decision for yourself. And if you're making the right decision for yourself, that's ultimately the right decision for the program. So it's another way to demonstrate your maturity, but also the fact that you have put time and thought into this process and that you are making your decisions based off of like really, really strong evidence, right? Evidence that you collect and incorporate into how you figure out how you want to proceed. You can, like, maybe if you wanted to, you could look at who's going to be interviewing you. You know, when you get into research, it's usually a good idea to have like an idea of the research topics that somebody does. One, it's a cool way to be like, oh yeah, and I also really love salamanders. And then you know that May would be like, tell me more, you know, like it's just a nice way to like get yourself in almost. So that's another smart strategy. Don't kill yourself like memorizing what their research projects are. No, like broad strokes here. But it's also good because you can find the other roles that these people play. So for example, talking to a dean who happens to be really like a strong advocate in state legislature, you can talk about your interest in like legal issues, whatever related to your topics. So, you know, these are just a couple of other small things that you need to do to prime yourself and get ready for an interview process. And this applies to anything, not just MD-PhD.
If you freeze real bad, you can always ask them about themselves because people love to talk about themselves, or most people do. And so like, if you just like get in there and you just like shit the bed and like, what do I do? Ask them about their research, actively listen, and just keep asking follow-up questions until you like find your feet again. And by then you can like start talking about yourself and put the pieces of yourself out there like May and Corey talked about, but like always ask them about their research anyway, but especially if you're like, what do you do? You just like, you pass the buck completely and you spare yourself those moments.
Then they'll really like you because you were interested and curious and thoughtful.
All right, so we're at 7:35. Want to be respectful of everyone's time and our panelists, so we'll kind of leave it open for one or two more questions if anyone's got anything else. All right.
Like Kate said, we're going to post the slides and recordings and everything online. But I'm also going to pop my email in the chat. I see that Corey just did that as well. So if you want to send us messages, you can find us on the website. You can find us on the slides. You can find us in the chat and many other places. And I personally am very happy that you all are here. Thanks for coming to listen to us. And no question is a bad question. So send them all our way.
Awesome. Yep. Just what May said. Be on the lookout for more events from us. And I just really want to thank everyone for joining us. And thank you so much to our panelists for, you know, donating their time and being here and helping this be hopefully a really informative session for everyone who attended. So thank you so much, everyone, and have a great night.